Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to show you another strategy on how to beat part 7 of the Red Golem Raid. Now yesterday I already posted a video on how to beat it, but even though I'm free to play myself, I didn't really want to call that team free to play friendly because I did have to use like Enhanced 5, LR5, Winham, etc., which not everyone's gonna have. So in today's video, I'm going to show you a totally different strategy with a much more free-to-play friendly team. So you can see the team setup I'm using today. It has two SR characters. There is still Lotus and Julius, and Julius is max dupes, but hopefully if you do have versatile dupes, they should have one to Julius anyway. So that at least that part should be replicable. Lotus is like everyone's first choice in free SSR selection, so you should definitely have one copy for Lotus, whether it's doing your first 20 summons or it's from the 999 reroll summon during Christmas period. Charlotte, everyone get one for free, and then the other three characters I have used are all seasonal characters, and my theory is that hopefully you guys would have all of them because seasonal characters have that rate up banner, and normally people do some on the seasonal banners, especially the free to plays, rather than the normal banners. So they should be much more easier to get rather than the likes of Radius who I used in yesterday's strategy. So hopefully this one is gonna be relatable for a lot more people, and also even for the three seasonal characters I'm going to tell you some alternative options so you are definitely able to tweak this lineup yourself and to make it still work. Okay, now in terms of strategy, so rather than going for the barrier approach like I did in yesterday's video, which by the way, if you haven't seen it already, I will share the link in the description below because maybe that will still work for you. So I will definitely post that in the description. But in today's strategy, basically what I'm doing instead is I'm using Lotus and Julius for that double speed reduction, and basically the two of them can pretty much carry the first phase because the idea here is Lotus will slow down the enemy and then keep on extending that slow debuff. And even when the enemy is about to hit his full mobility, with Julia's skill page, which is compulsory in this lineup, by the way, if you have that skill page, you are then able to actually delete all of the enemy's mobility. And that's kind of why for the setup, you actually want to use Julius to only use skill 2 the second time round, so you actually delete that mobility. But at the same time, you also want to prioritize skill 2 over special skill because you want to make sure the enemy doesn't move rather than nuke. So that's kind of why I have set up the auto as using skill 1 first, then skill 2 to delete mobility, and then go for the nuke. And basically that's the right way of how you should want to set up the auto. And for Lotus, you want to do special skill first to slow down, and then keep on extending it with skill 2. So basically that's what you need for phase 1. As for the two other characters, anything can work really. I am using two SR characters to kind of demonstrate that, but it doesn't even have to be these two SR characters because with just Lotus and Juniors and they keep on slowing down and removing mobility, you can get about like 4 or 5 turns of attack before the enemy is able to make a move, and that can normally do about like 70% of the boss HP already. So what you need for the other two is really just a way for you to make up that gap of 30% extra damage that you can do. So you can bring buffers to buff your team up. You can bring another DPS to try to do that remaining 30% damage yourself. Or you can do what I'm doing, using a healer to make sure my Lotus and Junior still survive for a bit longer towards the end of the battle so they can still do more attacks and try to wipe out the remaining 30% or so the boss HP. So literally you can do whatever you want for those two slots to make it work. Too many options here. So just play whoever is the best in your remaining box. Now for phase 2 is slightly different approach. Now, yesterday I was trying to go for the one-shot move, which was possible with Juniors because first of all that's an LR5 and also I have upgraded all of the skills. However, now without Juniors anymore because I use Juniors in phase 1, you can no longer one-shot phase 2. So now I'm going for the more traditional out-sustain, and basically I'm doing that with one healer, one blue DPS, one debuffer. You can potentially also use a different buffer here, and then also someone else who's able to do with damage reduction. So the idea here is that before your healer has the opportunity to heal, your damage reduction really need to apply. Just because of the way the turn orders I believe that's going to work. So basically, the boss is going to do the second attack before your healer moves. So that's kind of why you need a slightly faster unit to actually do the damage reduction as quickly as possible. So that's basically what you want to do here. Now, in terms of who do you actually want to use for phase 2, so Charlotte, everyone should have one copy, so that's kind of guaranteed. Now for your blue DPS, I'm using blue Yami, but in all honesty, blue DPS is like one position which there's so many replacement options. So the very straightforward replacement option would be Jack. If you do happen to have, so the original blue Jack, so if you happen to have him, he would work extremely well. If you don't, but you have Kiato instead, I don't have Kiato, so I can't show you. But if you do have Kiato, Kiato would also work extremely well here. And otherwise, the other option which I found can potentially work is actually going to be Ghost. And the reason why Ghost can work is actually if you compare Ghost's damage output with Blue Yami, it's actually quite crazy. Basically, Blue Yami have a special skill which does 170% scaling, and this is a level 2 one, so at level 1 this will only be 160%, and then his other attacks is like 100% scaling and 70% scaling. So normally it's about 100 and then also 160. And also if you look at the other additional effects of us, it's like debuff and total silence, which doesn't really matter that much in the boss battle, so you can pretty much ignore them. But if you actually compare those numbers to what Ghost is able to offer, you can see Ghost actually, first of all, his attack special skill is 150, but if you do have a crit, which you should do a crit build for Ghost, by the way, you can actually do an extra 90%. So that's actually 240% scaling, so much higher than Blue Yami. And on top of that, if you actually look at the skill 2, which only have a 2-turn cooldown, so you can actually rotate this quite easily, right? You can use skill 2, special skill, the skill 2 again. So, and if you look at this skill 2, this is 125% base. And if you have a buff, which you should from either your healer or from your supporter, you can do an extra attack of 50. So this is 175% scaling, which is actually higher than Blue Yami's ult. So that's kind of why Ghost can definitely work as your blue DPS if you are really lacking an option here. Would I recommend you building Ghost just for this? It's up to you whether you want to spend all the resources. It's easy to uh, enhance him to LR5, etc. But do you really want to spend time to farm the bonds and also to use up your experience? That's a decision for you to make, but I'm just telling you, he can definitely work as a substitute for Blue Yami. So that's basically what solve you the problem for DPS. Now, if I look at the rest of the team, the other members of phase 2. So I also have a healer here. Now, season 2 Charmy is definitely the best one for healers here, mainly because she can remove damage over time and the boss would apply burn damage. But that's kind of why season 2 Charmy is definitely the best. However, you can actually get away with by using your SR Charming set. And remember, I did say earlier, you don't have to use SR Charming in your first phase. You just need to somehow make up that remaining damage. So you don't even need to bring a healer for phase 1 if you don't want to. You can just bring a damage dealer or a buffer, etc. or debuffer. So you can totally free up your Charming from phase 1 and then bring it for phase 2. Now, if you do that, I do think a bit of RNG is probably needed because you would need your SR Charmy to always use skill 1 and try to go for that double hit, which can then allow you to heal your entire team. So it is definitely gonna be a lot more RNG based, but it's still possible in theory. And now for the last option, for the season 2 Ghost, now basically what you need here is someone who is able to apply damage reduction, and anyone will be able to do that would work. So a straightforward replacement would be William. William is able to get a damage reduction and then also buff up the attack with his skill 2. Another interesting option which I think could work would be your season 2 Noelle, because season 2 Noelle can actually, even though she can't do damage reduction, she can put up a barrier which works in the same way. And then on top of that, her barrier also allow you to counter that. So even though you're not buffing up your teammate, the counter attack kind of make up for that damage difference. And on top of that, also one of her buff from her barrier is actually you can do extra damage against the color you have advantage for, I think. And basically, this is a blue DPS and the boss is red, so that buff will still apply. So that's kind of why I do feel Season 2 Noel would also work here as in the last slot. Um, so yeah, so basically this is what I think would be the most easiest way of clear part 7. And also, like I said, there's so many different options, so hopefully all of you will be able to find your own version of this strategy and use that to beat part 7. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about before showing you the clip is the actual gear requirement, which I do feel is a lot lower than your usual, because first of all, I'm not going to show you the gear for Charmy and Volto. Well, let me do that. But you can see Charmy, I'm not even using it. Actually, I think I took off the gears for Charmy, but I was using something I heard earlier, which is like a mixture of magic attack and defense. And Valtos, I was using like full defense pieces. But like I said, any character will work. Just make sure they survive the first hit so that they can do their damage, they do their support, whatever. Just make sure they survive, and that's enough for those two. For your Lotus, basically what you want to do is you want to put a bit of defense. Once again, you want to survive the first turn. As long as you survive the first turn, you are then able to attack like 5 times in a row because you'll keep on slowing them down and remove mobility, etc. So you just need to make sure you have some defense pieces so that you're actually able to survive. The rest can go into magic attack or attack, doesn't really matter. And then as for Julius, Juniors doesn't really matter because Juniors can always self revive, so it doesn't really matter whether you have any defense piece on him. So that's kind of why I went for all attack, and also that's also the reason why I said this team is a bit more flexible in terms of gear. So you can see I'm not even using a whole set of attack or magic attack. I'm mixing them up, and the reason I'm able to do so is because I'm not really using any buffing um, in my team, and without any buffer, the magic attack or attack doesn't need to scale towards any direction, so I'm able to literally just whack on the highest damaging gears I have without needing to worry for a whole set, etc. So that's kind of why I think it's a lot more forgiving from the gear perspective. Now, as for phase 2, your Season 2 Charmy, if you do play her, should definitely go for full HP. I mean, that one's like, guaranteed you do need a full HP set for that. As for Ghost, remember what I said, you want your damage reduction out before the boss is able to move. So that's kind of why you also need at least one speed set on him. As for the others, always try to do defense or HP, etc. to make sure he's a bit more bulkier. Now, as for Charlotte, just whack on whatever HP, defense, basically make sure she survives, and that's all you need for Charlotte. And then lastly, for Blue Yami, I'm using a combination of both defense and also attack because the idea here is that he needs to survive for long enough so that he's able to do 2 ult. So do play around with your own gears. As long as he's able to survive for 2 ult, it'll be enough. I think I also used the skill page to further increase his defense. But basically, once again, this one's a lot more forgiving because if you don't have that defense skill page, then what you can do is you go for more defense pieces in your gear and then use an attacking damage skill page, and basically you can just change it however you want to make sure you have enough HP for you to do 2 ult, and that would be enough. But that's kind of why I do feel like gear perspective, hopefully this is a lot more relatable for the free plays as well, because in all honesty, a lot of the things you can just mix up however you want. There's no, probably other than one full set of HP for Season 2 Charmy and one full set of speed for your damage reduction unit, the others can all mix and match, so you should definitely be able to replace this with whichever gears you are able to farm.